Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to my channel, welcome back to a new video. This was also a requested video from the one I posted last time. You guys wanted to see how I journal, and there will be two parts to this, because in this video we will be talking about Quran journaling just in time before Ramadan, and inshallah in the next one we will do my personal journaling. Actually, before we do get into it, I just want to tell you guys why I started this, why I think it's very important too. The reason why I decided to start studying the Quran, and actually calling it studying the Quran, because I believe that's what it is. When it comes to my course or any exam that I have for anything to do with the dunya, I always try my absolute best with everything. I'll stay up as many hours as I need to do that, but when it came to the Quran or the Deen, I didn't give it that much time. I didn't give it that much urgency and importance, when this is actually the most important one. So I switched my mindset and I said, I also have to give this and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala as much time as I've been giving my maths exams, my science exams, my clinicals and everything like that, because at the end of the day, this is why Allah Swt put me here. And I will not lie to you guys, I believe it has been one of the most beneficial things that I've done for myself, in terms of getting close to Allah, understanding Allah, getting to know who Allah is, because guidance is in the Quran. All the knowledge, all the questions that you have, the answers are in the Quran. There's a different type of, I don't know how to explain it, but there's a different type of closeness that you can only get to Allah through with the Quran. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, there's a different type of knowledge that you gain from the Quran, and you can only get it from the Quran. So my first ever step when I began this process was to go back to the Qaeda. I got myself a Qaeda and I went back to it. This is because my study routine has two parts, part 1 and part 2. And part 1 is to memorize the surahs, and part 2 is understanding the surahs, like actually knowing what is it that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying to me in this surah. Not just reading blindly. And this is also when I started implementing, not implementing, but this is when I started understanding what I was saying when I was praying, because there was a time when I didn't even know what Surah Fatiha meant. I was just reading blindly. But now that I know what Surah Fatiha is, I can actually focus on it when I'm reading it during Salah. I take, the breaks when I'm reading it to let Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala to reply to me, because now I know that Surah Fatiha is actually a conversation between me and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and I have to give him the chance to reply, and I'm not just saying Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman. It's so true when we do that. Oh my god. Yeah, so part 1 and part 2, let's just get it. Let's start with the Qaeda. So I went back to this book that has the alphabet, and it teaches you how to read the Quran. I recommend every single one of you guys to do, if you don't feel confident enough reading Arabic in the Quran, go back to the Qaeda. And this one specifically, I cannot explain how good this book is. Go back to it. There is absolutely no shame in going back to it and learning alif ba ta. Like, it's fine as long as you're doing it for the sake of Allah and you want to be able to read the Quran in Arabic. Get this book. So this is step 1. 100% don't feel any shame in going back to this book, because I absolutely did. And then when you feel confident enough, you can move the Quran. It's up to you. You can either do the Qaeda and the Quran at the same time, or you can do one each. It's up to you. One at each time. So the next step is for you to now hold the Quran and keep memorizing the surahs. And the way I do it for me is, obviously I do the traditional way. I read it in Arabic, and then repetition is key. I keep repeating it until I'm confident that I know the surah. And then my next step, this is my journaling book. What I do is I will write that specific surah that I just learnt in my book to lock it in. I don't know, there's something about writing down things that just stays in my head, like I will not forget it. So to lock it in, memorize, repeat, and then write it down. And to be honest, for me, this is up to you guys, but as you can see, that's, for example, Surah Falaq, and this was back in 2021 anyways, when I decided to start from scratch. I would write it as many times as I could, like Surah Falaq, yeah, just like that. Write it down as many times as you can until you're confident that you know the surah in your head. And then we'll move on to the next step. This is now part 2. We've gone past using the qaida for you to be able to know the rules when you're reading in the Quran, and then writing down the surah in your journaling book so it can lock into your brain. So that's the memorizing part. Now part 2 includes this book. I've showed you guys this book so many times. It's the Quran transliteration, and what I do with this is I started learning about the surah's revelation period. I started learning about what is it that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is saying to me, like the translation. I actually want to understand, what is this surah about? What's the story behind the surah? By the way, this is also a full-time course that you do at home, but we need to remember that at the end of the day, we're doing it for Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And although you may think that you're not seeing results straight away, you will eventually see results and you will be rewarded for it. So what I do with this book is I'll pick a surah. I think for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to stick to Surah Al-Fatiha. It's very detailed, okay? It tells you what each ayah is in English, what is Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala saying. There is the historical background of the surah. It gives you the revelation period. Everything that you need is here. And then the way I do it, after I feel confident in what I've just read and I feel that I've understood it, once again I go back to my journaling book and I write down the most important parts, get you a highlighter and highlight the parts that stood out to you. Yes, I go back to my journaling book and I write down a summary in my own words. This is very key. Write it in your own words to see if you actually understood what was said. I'll write it down into my own words, revelation period, the historical background and things like that. Once I got that down, my next step is to now try and write down the translation to see if I know it. I mean, you don't really have to do this with every single surah in the Quran, but the surahs that you use to pray, I honestly think that you should know what is it that you're saying when you're praying. So make sure that you try to remember those, memorize those if you can, but it's also important that you understand the history of, you know, all the surahs that you've come across. You know the translation. But honestly, that is it. That is what I mean by studying the Quran, Quran journaling. And if you do this whilst praying to Allah to ask Him to grant you a teacher, someone with a lot more knowledge, inshallah you will get just that. But for now, whilst you're at home, I think this is a very strong foundation that you can start building for yourself. And then when you find that teacher, you would have come to him or her with, you know, a strong foundation. And normally this takes me, let's say, about an hour to do the whole journaling, because there's, you know, 2 parts of it. There's the reading and memorizing it, and then there's the writing it down to lock in. But let me know if you guys try this. Let me know if it works for you. Well, I pray that it does work, because it absolutely worked for me. And inshallah, I will see you in my next video. Bye.